Meet Edward. Edward sells houses, but not just any houses, haunted houses. He is a realtor specializing in properties with a spooky history. Edward doesn't shy away from the strange and eerie, he embraces it. He finds beauty in the unsettling, comfort in the unknown. Edward's journey into this unique niche began unexpectedly. Years ago, his first sale was a beautiful but unsettling Victorian home. The house had a reputation, whispers of cold spots, doors creaking open on their own. But the family who bought it loved the history, they loved the thrill. That sale ignited a passion in Edward. He realized there's a market for the unusual, a clientele seeking something beyond the ordinary. He decided to cater to these unique needs. He became the go-to realtor for haunted houses. Now Edward spends his days exploring dusty attics, walking through creaky hallways, encountering whispers of stories long past. He learned to read the signs, to sense the energy that lingers within these walls. Each house has its own tale to tell. Edward is there to listen. Blackwood Manor was a grand old house. It stood on a hill overlooking the town. It was a house of shadows and secrets. Edward felt it the moment he stepped inside. The air was heavy. The silence was broken only by the sound of his own footsteps. The previous owner had left suddenly, leaving behind furniture, personal belongings, as if they fled in a hurry. They left behind stories of strange occurrences, objects moving on their own, voices whispering in the dead of night. Edward walked through the empty rooms, examined the faded wallpaper, and imagined the lives once lived within these walls. He felt a presence, a coldness that clung to him. It was in the shadows that danced in the corners of his vision. One night, as Edward was locking up, he heard a whisper, clear as day. It came from the library, a room filled with dusty books and forgotten stories. He couldn't make out the words, but the voice sent shivers down his spine. He knew then that Blackwood Manor was truly haunted. The Victorian mansion was a masterpiece of another era. High ceilings, elaborate moldings, stained glass windows. It was beautiful, but an eerie chill hung in the air. Edward felt it as he walked through the grand entrance hall. The house had been vacant for years. The family that owned it had suffered a tragedy. They abandoned the house, leaving behind their memories, their pain. Edward walked up the grand staircase, ran his hand along the smooth mahogany railing, and felt a sudden drop in temperature, a cold spot. It was as if an unseen presence had brushed past him. In the master bedroom, he saw it, a shadow. It flickered in the corner of the room. It wasn't a trick of the light. It was a distinct human-shaped shadow. It vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving behind a sense of unease. Ashwood Estate was a musician's paradise. A grand piano sat in the center of the music room. The keys were covered in dust. The wood was worn with age, but the piano held an eerie secret. Edward learned from the neighbors that the previous owner was a pianist. He had died in the music room. They said his spirit remained tied to the instrument he loved. As Edward stood in the music room, he felt a presence. The air was thick with anticipation. He placed his fingers on the piano keys. They were cold to the touch. He played a simple chord. The sound that came from the piano was not his own. It was a melancholic melody, played with skill and emotion. The notes hung in the air, then faded into silence. Edward stood there, frozen in place. He knew he had just witnessed something unexplainable. Willow Creek Cottage was a charming little house nestled in the woods. It seemed like the perfect place to escape the world. But, the cottage held a dark secret, a secret that Edward felt as soon as he crossed the threshold. The previous owner had lived alone, and they had passed away peacefully in their sleep. But their presence lingered. Edward felt it in the stillness of the house, in the way objects seemed to be slightly out of place. One evening, Edward was preparing to leave the cottage. He had just locked the back door when he heard it, a soft sigh. It came from the living room. He slowly turned around, his heart pounding in his chest. The living room was empty, but the rocking chair by the fireplace was moving, gently rocking back and forth, as if an unseen guest had just settled in. Edward stood there, mesmerized. He watched as the rocking chair slowly came to a stop. The sigh echoed in his mind long after he left the cottage. Thornwood Place was a stately manor. Its most striking feature was a large, ornate mirror. It hung in the main hallway. The mirror was old, its silver backing tarnished with age, and it held a dark history. Local legend said the mirror was cursed, said to reflect the darkest secrets of the house and to trap the souls of those who gazed into its depths. Edward, however, was skeptical. He had seen many strange things in his career, but a haunted mirror seemed a bit far-fetched. One night, Edward was alone in the house. He was walking down the hallway when he caught his reflection in the mirror. His blood ran cold. The reflection staring back at him was not his own. It was the face of an old woman, her eyes filled with sorrow. Her lips moved, forming words he couldn't hear. Edward stumbled backward, his heart pounding in his chest. He blinked and the reflection was gone. He was left staring at his own shaken image. He couldn't deny what he had seen. The haunted mirror of Thornwood Place was real. Seacliff Cottage stood on a windswept cliff overlooking the ocean. It was a picturesque location, but the cottage was plagued by a tragic past, a past that Edward felt in the salty air, in the mournful cries of the seagulls. The cottage had once been home to a sea captain and his family. The captain had been lost at sea, his wife and children left to mourn him. Their grief, it seemed, had seeped into the very walls of the house. As Edward explored the cottage, he felt a constant presence, as if he was being watched, followed. He heard whispers in the wind, saw fleeting shadows in the periphery of his vision. One night, Edward was awakened by a cold chill. He sat up in bed, his heart pounding in his chest. He saw them then, glimmering figures standing at the foot of his bed. The captain's wife and children, their eyes filled with a deep sadness. They reached out to him, their voices a mournful chorus on the wind. Edward's experiences in haunted houses have changed him. He has seen things that most people would dismiss as fantasy. He has felt the presence of the unseen world, and it has filled him with a sense of wonder. He has learned that fear is not always a bad thing. It can be a reminder of the mysteries that lie beyond our understanding. It can be a source of excitement, a catalyst for exploring the unknown. Edward has embraced the shadows. He has found beauty in the eerie, comfort in the unsettling. He has learned to listen to the whispers of the past, to respect the spirits that linger in these haunted houses. He treats every house with respect, acknowledges the stories it holds, understands the weight of its history. He knows that he is not just selling a property, he is selling a piece of the past. Edward's profession is not for everyone. It takes a certain kind of person to find peace in the unsettling, to see beauty in the decay, to embrace the unknown with open arms. Edward is content with his life. He finds satisfaction in helping people find their dream homes, even if those homes come with a few ghostly residents. He enjoys the thrill of the unexpected, the challenge of uncovering the secrets that each house holds. He knows that his work is important. He's preserving a part of history that is often overlooked. He's giving a voice to the stories that would otherwise be forgotten. He's bridging the gap between the seen and the unseen world. Edward, the haunted house realtor, lives a life less ordinary. He walks among shadows, listens to the whispers of ghosts, and finds beauty in the eerie. He's a reminder that there is more to the world than meets the eye.